If you're a man over 60, you probably pride yourself on doing the right things for your health. Maybe you've traded fried foods for salads, or you've been adding more so-called superfoods to your plate. But what if I told you that some of those very foods you've always been told are healthy, may actually be stealing away your testosterone and your vitality, slowly draining the energy and drive that make you feel like yourself? I'll never forget a patient of mine, George. He was 72, a retired engineer, sharp-minded, and devoted to his wife of 50 years. He came to see me with complaints that he was just tired all the time. His motivation was slipping, and intimacy wasn't the same anymore. What struck me most was that George insisted he was doing everything right. He was eating oatmeal for breakfast, snacking on nuts, and having plenty of whole grains. Yet he felt older than his years, and it was breaking his spirit. I'm Dr. Nolan Easton, and I've spent more than 30 years helping men just like George navigate the challenges of aging, especially when it comes to testosterone, strength, and vitality. Over the decades, I've seen how confusing nutrition advice can become. One headline says a food is good for your heart, another says it's bad for your hormones. No wonder so many men are left feeling lost. My mission, and the reason I'm speaking with you today, is to help clear away that fog so you can make choices that truly support your energy, your confidence, and your masculinity well into your later years. George's story is one I see repeated often. Men who are conscientious about their diet but still end up shortchanged when it comes to energy, muscle, and bedroom performance. When we sat down together and took a closer look, I discovered that some of the healthy foods George was leaning on were in fact lowering his testosterone and contributing to his fatigue. And when we made some simple swaps, the transformation was remarkable. Now, before we go deeper, I want to remind you, this is not about fear or giving up all the foods you love. It's about awareness, balance, and learning how your body works at this stage of life. When you understand the hidden effects that certain foods have, you can make choices that protect your vitality instead of undermining it. You see, testosterone isn't just about intimacy. It's about muscle strength, mental clarity, bone health, and even your sense of drive each day. Without it, men often describe themselves as feeling flat, weak, or old. So when foods quietly chip away at this hormone, it's no small matter. For George, those chips had been adding up for years. He didn't notice it at first, just a little less motivation here, a bit more fatigue there, but eventually it was impossible to ignore. When I explained to George that some plant-based oils he used for cooking and some grains he ate daily could suppress testosterone production, his eyes widened. He said, "But I thought these were good for me." And in one sense, they are. Many of these foods are praised for heart health or digestion. But what most men don't realize is that the very same foods can shift hormone balance in ways that don't serve us as we age. That's why context is everything. What works for a 30-year-old doesn't always work the same for a man at 70. And here's the encouraging part. Once George made adjustments, it didn't take long before he felt the difference. Within weeks, his energy lifted. He told me he started waking up with more spark, and his wife noticed the change too. His confidence returned, and so did his smile. That's what I want for you, to not just live long, but to live well with that spark intact. Now, if this message already resonates with you, let me pause and ask you to do something simple but powerful. Tap that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the little bell so you'll never miss advice that could change your daily life. And if what I'm saying speaks to you, type a yes in the comments below. If it doesn't, type no. I read those comments myself, and your feedback helps me bring you the kind of information you truly need. The truth is, George's experience taught me an important lesson that I share with every man I meet. The foods that nourish one part of our body can sometimes quietly deplete another. And for men over 60, when testosterone is already naturally declining, we can't afford to ignore this balance. Our choices either support our hormones or slowly strip them away. What made George's turnaround possible wasn't some expensive supplement or radical diet overhaul. It was understanding which foods were secretly undermining him and which ones would support him better at his age. This shift gave him back a sense of control, and that's something every man deserves. As I continue to share George's journey with you, I want you to keep something in mind. It's never too late to reclaim vitality. Even small, thoughtful changes can restore strength and confidence in ways that ripple across every part of your life. And while the path is unique for each man, the principles remain the same. I want you to picture yourself 6 months from now. Imagine feeling more energy when you wake up in the morning, having the stamina to enjoy the things you love, whether that's gardening, walking with your spouse, or spending time with your grandchildren. Imagine sitting down at dinner and knowing that the food on your plate is not just keeping you alive, but actively fueling your masculinity, your strength, your drive. That's what this conversation is about. That's what I want for you. And just as George discovered, it starts with awareness, knowing which healthy foods may not be so healthy for you anymore. Because the truth is, many men over 60 are unintentionally sabotaging their testosterone every single day without realizing it. And the cost is not just physical, it's emotional, relational, and deeply personal. But the good news? Once you see it, you can change it.
When George and I began untangling his diet, what stood out most wasn't that he was eating bad foods in the traditional sense. He wasn't loading up on sugary desserts or fast food. In fact, he had cut most of those things out years ago. Instead, the foods that were quietly undermining him were the ones he believed were helping him age gracefully. And that's exactly what makes this issue so deceptive, because it doesn't come from obvious junk food. It sneaks in under the radar. One of the first areas we looked at was his reliance on certain vegetable oils. George proudly told me he had switched to using lots of canola and soybean oil for cooking because he'd read they were good for the heart. And while these oils may carry that reputation, what they were really doing inside his body was something very different. They were tipping the balance of fats in a way that interfered with his hormone production. You see, testosterone doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's built from cholesterol and supported by the right balance of fats. When a man's diet leans heavily toward polyunsaturated oils, especially those that are highly processed, it can disrupt this balance and make it harder for the body to maintain healthy testosterone levels. George had unknowingly been depriving his body of the raw materials it needed to keep his vitality strong. This was a light bulb moment for him. He leaned back in my office chair and said, "So, I've been working against myself all these years?" And I reassured him it wasn't his fault. He was following the advice he'd been given, advice that's plastered across magazines and health columns. But for men over 60, what works for cardiovascular health may not always work for hormones. The key is finding that middle ground where both can thrive. When George swapped out some of those oils for more stable natural fats, like olive oil for salads and avocado for cooking, he started to notice subtle changes within weeks. His afternoon crashes weren't as sharp, his mood seemed steadier, and he even remarked that his sleep felt more refreshing. This is what happens when your body starts getting back in sync. But oils were just one piece of the puzzle. Another food that surprised George was soy. Like many men his age, he'd added more soy-based snacks and even soy milk into his diet because he thought it was a healthier protein. What he didn't realize was that soy contains compounds that can mimic estrogen in the body. While the effect is mild, for men with already declining testosterone, even a mild estrogenic influence can tip the scales in the wrong direction. George chuckled when I explained this. "No wonder I've been feeling a little less like myself," he said. And it wasn't about demonizing soy entirely. It was about awareness and moderation. For him, cutting back made a real difference. He didn't need to eliminate every trace of it, but by choosing other protein sources more often, he gave his body a chance to restore balance. Now, let me pause here, because this is where I want you to really reflect on your own habits. Think about your kitchen. Do you often reach for vegetable oil, margarine, or soy products because you've been told they're the healthier choice? If so, you may be in the same situation George was, working hard to support your health, but unknowingly putting stress on your hormones. If this is starting to make sense to you, I'd love for you to type a simple yes in the comments. If you're not quite convinced, type no. Either way, your feedback is invaluable, and it helps me continue to guide men like you with the advice that truly matters. And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe if you find this conversation meaningful. It's one small way to ensure this information reaches other men who might need it too. As George's diet evolved, another layer of his story unfolded. He confessed that he was eating a lot of whole grains, brown rice, bran cereal, and high-fiber breads, because he wanted to keep his digestion moving. On the surface, that's a good goal. But for George, the sheer volume of grains he consumed was another hidden factor sapping his vitality. Some grains, especially when eaten in large amounts, contain compounds called phytates. These can bind to minerals like zinc, which is crucial for testosterone production. Without enough zinc, the machinery of testosterone simply doesn't run smoothly. This part of the journey was tough for George. He'd grown up believing that a bowl of bran cereal was the ultimate health breakfast. Changing that habit felt almost like breaking a tradition. But when he tried replacing some of those cereals with eggs and vegetables, he noticed a profound shift. He told me, "I feel fuller, stronger, and not as sluggish." That was his body thanking him for giving it what it truly needed at his age. And that's really the heart of this conversation. It's not about perfection. It's not about chasing the latest diet fad or cutting everything out of your life. It's about aligning what you eat with the stage of life you're in right now. What supported you at 40 may not support you at 70, and there's no shame in that. It's just biology. I want you to think of food as a partner in your journey. The right foods lift you up, keep your spark alive, and let you feel confident in your own skin. The wrong ones, even if they're called healthy in the headlines, can quietly chip away at that spark. George learned that lesson the hard way, but once he did, the improvement in his energy and vitality was like watching a man get a piece of his youth back. That's the gift of awareness. Once you see clearly, you can make choices that put you back in charge. And when a man feels in charge of his own health, it radiates outward to his relationships, his sense of independence, and the way he greets each day. George's story didn't stop at oils, soy, or grains. Once he started noticing improvements, he became eager to dig deeper. "What else have I been overlooking, Doc?" he asked me one afternoon with a mix of curiosity and determination. That's one of the best moments as a physician, when a patient feels empowered instead of defeated, ready to take back control rather than surrendering to aging.